We have breaking news coming in, and this is in regard to former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, who has been found guilty of 3 charges and has been sentenced to death. Now, it is Sheikh Hasina slamming the court. She's slamming the verdict, calling it biased and politically motivated. She's terming the tribunal rigged, and Hasina's statement is coming about on the death sentence. This is the verdict that reveals brazen intent of the extremists, is the first reaction coming out of Sheikh Hasina, who's here in India. Aditya Rajkal, my colleague, joining us in order to get us details of this. Aditya, take us through the reaction coming about and what repercussions does this really bear as far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned, given the fact that she's not even there in Bangladesh?
Well, yes, Divya, it's the big statement coming at this. Sheikh Hasina has reacted to the trial and the verdict that has just come in at this particular time. We are breaking details of the first statement from the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. It's a 5-page statement that we have just received from Sheikh Hasina. It says, and I quote, "The verdict announced against me have been made by a rigged tribunal established and presided over by an unelected government with no democratic mandate." That's the first big key statement from Sheikh Hasina. She says that they are biased and politically motivated in this distasteful call for death penalty. They reveal the brazen and murderous intent of extremist figures within the interim government to remove Bangladesh's last elected Prime Minister and to nullify the Awami League as a political force. So that's the crux of this entire statement. A rigged system, that's what Sheikh Hasina says, and they want to nullify both democracy and Awami League from Bangladesh entirely. Remember, earlier in an interview, exclusive interview with NDTV, Sheikh Hasina had said that Yunus has a relationship with radicals in Bangladesh. He's given an open, a free run to the radicals, and there are cabinet members with radical thought process, with links with terror groups as well. A big charge coming in from Sheikh Hasina. If I can take you through the statement, it also says that millions of Bangladeshis toiling under the chaotic, violent and socially regressive administration of Mohammad Yunus will not be fooled by this attempt to shortchange them for their democratic rights. They can see that the trials conducted by the so-called International Crimes Tribunal were never intended to achieve justice or provide any genuine insights into the events of July and August 2025. Rather, their purpose was to scapegoat the Awami League and to distract the world's attention from the failings of Dr. Yunus and his ministers. It's a big statement coming in, a 5-page statement. Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, reacting from New Delhi to the verdict that is coming from the ICT, giving her death sentence in this particular case. It's a huge charge she's leveling against Mohammad Yunus, the chief advisor of Bangladesh as well, who has announced elections next year, early next year. But the question really is about democracy, the restoration of democracy, and will Awami League be allowed to contest elections? As of now, that doesn't seem like. It's the first reaction coming in from the Awami League top leader and the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. We had early reaction from other ministers. Concerning the ICT, she has put out the timeline of the entire development over the last few months and how it has been concerning, and there have been human rights abuses by the Yunus government in the past as well. So this is the first statement. At the end, towards the end of the 5-page, she says, "I reject the ICT's other allegations of human rights abuses as equally unevidenced. I am very proud of my government's record of human rights and development. We led Bangladesh to join the International Criminal Court in 2010, gave refuge to hundreds and thousands of Rohingya fleeing persecution in Myanmar, and expanded access to electricity and education, and presided over 450% GDP growth over the 15 years, lifting millions out of poverty." So Sheikh Hasina rejecting the verdict that came in from the Dhaka ICT tribunal, and also at the same time saying that she will continue to wage the battle to restore democracy in Bangladesh.
Right, Aditya, of course, the court noted that the Hasina government did not pay heed to the students' demands, and instead of listening to the students, the then Prime Minister undermined the movement and made derogatory remarks pointing towards the students instead, and which is why the Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal has found the deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina guilty in the case of alleged crimes against humanity committed during last year's student-led agitation. Now, just take us through, Aditya, the 3 charges that she has been found guilty of, and the repercussions that this really has on Sheikh Hasina. We do know that, she's 78 years of age. She's living here in India. What does this really mean for the former Prime Minister?
stranded in New Delhi since 5th August 2024. She took refuge here, and India immediately, gave her shelter. She is at a secret location somewhere in New Delhi. That's where she spoke to NDTV in detail about the current circumstances and situation in Bangladesh. She gave a very open and candid interview to me last evening, which we played this morning on NDTV. And this is the day when the big verdict came in from the ICT giving death sentence to the former Prime Minister, perhaps the last democratically elected Prime Minister of Bangladesh. If we can go through the charges against her, the main charge has been to incite violence and in fact give orders to kill the students and the protesters in the July and August so-called uprising and the radical violent protests that were happening, to which there were a lot of firing incidents that happened, and finally a lot of killings also that motivated further protests. So the entire charge has been to conspire the killings, to order the killings, and also be the chief architect of the violence that we saw in Bangladesh in July as well as in August. In fact, in this statement, Sheikh Hasina goes to give charges against Dr. Yunus as well, the chief advisor of Bangladesh. At this point in time, she says that our government was democratically elected by the people and we were accountable to them. We sought their votes during elections and took pains to avoid any actions that could harm ordinary citizens. Dr. Yunus, on the other hand, came to power unconstitutionally and with the support of extremist elements. That's what Sheikh Hasina says. She goes on to say, under the rule, every protest from the students, garment workers, doctors, nurses and teachers to professionals has been met with suppression, some of it brutal. Peaceful demonstrations have been shot and killed. Journalists who attempt to report these incidents face harassment and torture. So these are the big charges that Sheikh Hasina in her first statement is leveling against Yunus. She also goes on to say that after taking control, Yunus's forces carried out killings and attacks in Gopalganj and even filed criminal cases against the wounded victims themselves, turning the persecuted into the accused. Then she says across the country, homes, businesses and properties belonging to hundreds of thousands of Awami League leaders and activists have been burnt and destroyed. So a very detailed, aggressive but factual statement given out by the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina against Mohammad Yunus, giving out details of how there were killings, minorities were attacked as well, but particularly Awami League leaders and activists and cadre have faced repression continuously ever since August last year, when Sheikh Hasina had to flee the country when there was massive violence outside the Prime Minister's residence. So at this point in time, of course, developments happening thick and fast. Just minutes after, there was a huge ruling by the ICT tribunal giving death sentence to Sheikh Hasina. Now Sheikh Hasina hitting back, saying that this is a political witch hunt and she will fight for democracy and fight against the authoritarian regime of Mohammad Yunus.
Right, Aditya. Well, we also have with us Mohammad Kamruzzaman joining us, senior journalist from Bangladesh. We also have Sarwar Hussain, advocate from the Dhaka Supreme Court, with us. So Mr. Hussain, over to you first. In regard to this verdict, would you say this has been on expected lines?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
This was much expected verdict, and that has been pronounced today. It was tragically a democratic party in 70 on gradually turned to be autocrat and ultimately a fascism. So history teaches us every autocrat falls. Sheikh Hasina also has fallen, and after the fall there will be justice, and the justice has come today. So this is a lesson for anybody, any leader becoming autocrat in the name of democracy. Sheikh Hasina could made a history of democracy. Instead, Sheikh Hasina has made a history of fascism. Instead, she has made a history of autocrat. So every autocrat it will fall, and Sheikh Hasina has fallen. And this was much expected verdict the people of Bangladesh was expecting. As I heard from one commentator that the Sheikh Hasina is claiming that minority is being tortured in Bangladesh. This is not the case. Every time Bangladesh government has said that you send delegation or you come and visit physically, and there is no single case of minority victimization or victimization on count of religion. This is all orchestration. Unfortunately, no autocracy ever accept their fault. Sheikh Hasina and her party is not in a position to understand their wrongdoing, their autocratic behavior, their destroying of the democracy, destroying of a country. They will never accept that, and they will always take the plea that this is a political judgment. This is a political trial. No, it is not. Today we heard all judgment pronouncement by all standards in any international standard. This is a fair, free trial, and anybody can count it. All the journalists, all the international media were present, and I think this tribunal has drastically changed from the tribunal from 2009 to 2024, and the tribunal constituted after first is a mass apparent, mass transparent, and developed mass having a accountability and transparency. One example that this judgment today was telecasted in almost all TV channels in Bangladesh, including the international TV channel. So you can really comment that the quality of judgment, the standard of the judgment is much higher than that was from 2009 to 2024. So
right.
this trial was much accepted, much expected, and what Awami League has done from 2009 to 2024, from democracy, they have turned to be autocrat, and this is the consequences of every autocrat the world ever had.
All right, fair enough, Brigadier Hussain. You're known for your frank views. You're known to be against the dynastic politics that's happening in Bangladesh. Fair enough. A reasoned debate is very much important on this. But Mr. Arafat, would you like to react to what Brigadier Hussain just said?
Yes, of course. What Mr. Hussain said, it is quite expected because Mr. Hussain belongs to a political party which is opposed to Awami League. He belongs to BNP. So he has to make such comments quite naturally. But what he just said, it's an utter lie that everything was done transparently. Just because it was broadcast in the television doesn't make it transparent. Because when Yunus government, they sent their goons and the thugs to destroy the 32 residents of Bangabandhu, that was also broadcast in the television. Doesn't mean that it was a right thing to do, right? And also, one of the judges was never a judge of the ICT, International Crimes Tribunal. He was a partisan person linked with BNP's politics. This is how they constituted. And Tajul Islam, who's the chief prosecutor, he was the main defender of the real war criminals who committed crimes in 1971. So it's a totally partisan game. They scripted the whole thing. All of them are the people, the judges from the BNP, the prosecution from the Jamaat-e-Islami and AB party, and everybody, and even the lawyer they appointed by the state. We saw a leaked conversation between the lawyer and the judges where he said, "Oh, I have to defend Sheikh Hasina. I cannot just say to the media that I also want her death penalty." So all those dramas has been exposed. So if you have any semblance of honesty, any semblance of sanity, then we would not say that this was a fair trial.
All right, fair enough. Mr. Arafat, I request you to stay with us. It's important that we are having a free and fair democratic debate here. BNP versus the Awami League versus Yunus at this particular time. I'm not sure whether this can be possible in today's Dhaka. And that's why we are having this debate out here for people to know what's happening in Dhaka, what are the different political opinions that are coming in. But for now, let's go across to Dhaka live. Mohammad Kamru Zama joins us, our journalist from Dhaka on the latest developments. Can you fill us in what happened inside the court, the charges that were put against Sheikh Hasina, who all were present, and what was the final verdict?
Actually, the court was fully packed with huge number of lawyers, journalists, and even there were some international journalists here today inside the court. And the judgment was read more than 2 hours. And every key points actually was read by the judge. For example, there were many courts and uncourts, and the judge, what he read is that how Sheikh Hasina, as the state head, commanded her administration, especially there were the quote and unquote of some conversation between the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the cabinet member like Obaidul Kader, even former cabinet member Hassanul Haq Yunu and Sheikh Hasina and the Dhaka South City Corporation Mayor. So there are so many audio clips that were leaked later, and where Sheikh Hasina commanded or Sheikh Hasina said to kill the protesters. So those that were read out in the during the judgment verdict. And even the judge also mentioned different reports published by media, local media, as well as international media, even in some YouTube channel, because, you know, this is an era of multimedia. So there were so many video clips where the massacres and killings were videographed by journalists as well as mass people. So those were also mentioned during the verdict proclamation. And after all these readout, the final judgment was declared that as the supreme commander of those human rights violation and killing during the mass uprising, Sheikh Hasina is accused. And
All right.
he was served death sentence by this court today. Amid huge security measures, including law enforcement and also members of army were also deployed here to maintain law and order and security here.
All right, Mohammad Kamruzzaman bringing us live report from Dhaka outside the court where the verdict against Sheikh Hasina was announced just a few minutes ago. Sheikh Hasina being convicted to death sentence. That's the verdict from the ICT. Let's bring in Saurabh also, who's been tracking Bangladesh very, very closely over the last many months, ever since the so-called July uprising, and then, of course, Sheikh Hasina fleeing to New Delhi. Saurabh, what is the way forward for Awami League? They're banned completely. They do not have the leadership entirely in Dhaka. Of course, protests have been announced. A shutdown has been announced. But will they be able to really realistically practice that democracy and be a part of the elections, or do you think the road ahead seems to be challenging?
Definitely challenging, and this is something that a lot of people have been discussing. In fact, there have been question marks on whether eventually the elections will be held in February or not. There's been that debate over the referendum. Remember, the Yunus government has announced that referendum on the same day as elections. The BNP was opposed to the idea of a referendum. The Jamaat wanted it, but not on the same day. And so there is question marks. There are still question marks whether eventually it will happen or not. But the Yunus government seems quite confident that it will happen. Coming to the Awami League, one of the arguments that have been made, and which is in favor of the Awami League, is that if they are fascist, if they are, absolutely have no support within Bangladesh, then allow them to contest elections and let them lose in the elections, let them be defeated in elections. That's a question that, of course, many will ask. But on the other hand, if you look at what's going on in Bangladesh, if you see the protests that are still happening, that indicates that while the leadership of the Awami League may have had to flee, while some of them are in jail for whatever happened during August 2024, there seems to be some support on the ground. Whether that's enough to win you an election, whether without a leadership you can win elections, or whether, this ban will continue till the elections and whether the Awami League can participate in these elections, those are still areas of question marks. But the fact is that, yes, at least for now, the Awami League leadership seems confident that they can take part in elections and they can contest and they still have a support base. Of course, that's something the BNP, the other parties, the Jamaat and the interim government, which of course does not have a political mandate, it hasn't been elected, seem to believe otherwise.
All right, Saurabh bringing us the latest developments. It does seem the Awami League is very much motivated to have that good fight for elections and restoration of democracy. We'll have to wait and watch how things unfold in the weeks up to the elections, really. But for now, thank you very much to Saurabh Kamruzzaman and, of course, our guests, Mohammad Ali Arafat and Brigadier Hussain, for joining us. We'll come back to you with more developments later. But for now, thank you very much for joining us here on NDTV. Back to you in the studio to Divya.